Hi, I'm Zach Kazan, managing editor at Worn and Wound. I'm joined today by Zach Weiss, Worn and Wound co-founder. Zach, how's it going?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we have today a table full of watches by Ming, the watch brand that they've been around for several years now, and I think have really evolved quite a bit. I know that my thoughts on the brand have evolved quite a bit over the years. I think yours have as well. So we're just going to kind of like talk about this selection of Mings, which includes watches that we personally own, as well as a few watches that we have on loan that we think are interesting. Let's just kind of like take attendance here of the Mings on the table. So we have the Ming Ghost and the Ming Minimalist, which are both reference number 3702. So they have the same case and movement, but just like kind of different treatments on the dial. And then we have your Ming Monolith, which is the
3707.
3707 is the Ming Monolith. And then my Ming Uni, which is the diver, which is Ming 3709. So
all 37 series.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
So I guess my first question is, do you know what these numbers mean? Because they have a certain logic in the universe of Ming. I haven't quite mastered that and wrapped my brain around it.
I don't quite. So I know the first number, the 37. So it's like 37 point and then the other number. Mm-hmm. The 37 is the series, and I believe that has to do with like sort of a general case sort of aesthetic or design.
Yes.
Of which, these are all the 37 series, which is one of their newer case designs. And initially I thought that was maybe just limited to like the $3,000 to $5,000 price point, but it's not. They also make watches like their rose gold mono pusher is a 37. So it's really just about the specific design language of this. It's probably the size. I believe it's this open bezel design. So I know with this, they pushed the kind of crystal very far out to the edge. Mm-hmm. Clearly, this is one they're getting a lot of mileage out of.
Yeah.
The other number I don't quite understand yet, and I admittedly have not like done much research, but like it's confusing to me that these are both the 3702 when they have different case materials, different dial designs, but they both have the same movement. So is it a movement thing?
Yeah. I have to confess, I do not know. I'm sure if we dug into the
Ming cipher.
Yeah, there is like an internal logic to it. Okay. So like in the Ming world, it all makes sense. I think the most important thing is like the watches themselves, though. Regardless of what they're called and the numbers assigned to them, just as with anything, like the watch has to work. So I guess let's start. Between the two of us, you were the first to pick up a Ming. You bought your Monolith several months before I picked up my Uni, and we've been covering Ming on Worn and Wound since the start. Ming's been on the podcast before. Tell me why you bought the Monolith when you did, and what drew you to it, and why Ming? Like, what about the brand is appealing to you?
Yeah. So I mean, when Ming first launched, and I forget exactly what year, but it's probably around like 2017 or so. They came out of the gate with a pretty striking design language, and there was no way not to notice them. Everyone was doing vintage, and then Ming did Ming, right? And they came out with a watch that was around $900 and a watch that was around $20,000, which unto itself is a really bold statement. So it was kind of, there was this sort of, what is this brand? What are they doing? There's a really like edgy almost design concept for them. It was very love it or leave it. And, at the time, I mean, I wasn't in the market for the $20,000 one, and I honestly don't think I was in the market for the $900 one either, but it didn't quite do it for me yet. But I liked that it existed. Years pass, and I think around the time that they came out with the the honeycomb, like the Masena Lab and the corresponding model, and I don't remember the reference on that, unfortunately. I think myself and I think the world at large sort of took a second notice of the brand. They had more interesting dial work to them, and I think kind of what was maybe starting to happen was that some of the technology from the higher end watches, the more expensive watches, was starting to make its way into the more affordable line, which admittedly was no longer $900. Now it's closer to a couple $1,000s. Yeah. So that's when I took notice, and then these drops kept happening. I was never in the right place at the right time for one, and then there was actually an event about 2 years ago in the Armory on the Upper East Side with Ming and Ming like collectors and fans, and they had a table of Mings. And
kind of like this.
This, even more. And the Monolith was sitting there, the 3707 Monolith. There's an older Monolith as well. So, and of all the watches on the table, that's the one that grabbed me. And I was like, if I'm ever going to get a Ming, I think that's the one. Last fall, sitting there, idle, bored perhaps, and there was an unworn monolith at Under Retail on the forums, and I was like, this is the fates. This is
sign from above.
This is a sign from above. So I made it happen, and I'm very glad I did, because that's become one of my most worn watches. It's one of the most different in my collection from anything else. It's really not a traditional watch in a lot of ways, and I've just really gotten an unexpected amount of joy out of wearing it.
I kind of had a similar evolution, towards Ming as you did. I kind of, came to them late. I bought the Uni diver just a few months ago. The thing that really kind of like rings true to me about what you just said is you find yourself wearing your watch a lot, and I find myself wearing the Uni because it's just so comfortable and easy to wear. Like they really have landed on something with this, I think 37 series of cases that's just like very ergonomic and easy to wear. And my watch is a little bit thicker than yours, but it's still like not like super thick. Like I wouldn't describe it as a thick or bulky watch by any means, but it's just like proportionally, it feels like just like the right size, and it's just very easy for me to reach for. On a daily basis. And it's black, so it's kind of like it goes with everything, and it's versatile and never really feels out of place, particularly in the warmer months, which we're heading into. But I do think that like the watches have gotten better, I think, like as they've evolved, and the like the newer Mings, especially like the ones at the higher end, like there's really like kind of incredible complicated watchmaking happening, and a lot of like really cool design work being done, stuff that like no other brand is doing, things with loom and with materials. This is like really innovative, and I do think that we're seeing it begin to trickle down into the more accessible Mings at this point.
100%.
Which is a nice thing.
One of the things that I really like about this watch, and I mean, 3 of them on the table in particular, this one sort of, the Ghost sort of stands out because it kind of has a different construction style. But like, there's no applied markers, there's no pad printing, there's no sunray dial. It's like there's a material language that they have evolved into that gives these watches a synthetic, futuristic, almost like not made by human hand sort of feel, which is unique to them, and even a very, very high-end watch. I mean, I'm sure there's other things that maybe are similar, but I don't know, there's this a level of like cleanliness and I don't know, impossibly perfect little things. Like the size of the Ming logo that is loomed, that is in there, it's microscopic, and it's done with a laser into sapphire. Like they've nailed these little things that make them, I mean, really stand out. It's no longer like, oh, this watch looks different, but it's made the same way. They're made different too, and in a proprietary fashion.
So you're reviewing the Ghost. You're going to write about that. I know you haven't had like a ton of time, as we're recording this, to spend with it yet. But do you have any like first impressions of the Ghost and sort of like how it compares with your Ming and the other Mings on the table, particularly the Minimalist, which is like again the same proportion, same case shape and movement. Yeah,
I mean, I think what's sort of interesting about what you're looking at here, maybe apart from your watch, but like these 3, because yours is a diver, it's got dual belt, like there's more going on, there's sort of more happening, and it's got more specs and stuff. But like these 3 are not interchangeable in the sense that they're the same, but like you could be fighting between the 3 perhaps, or like maybe you wouldn't want to own all 3 because they're too similar, but they're all riffing on very, very similar things, right? You have 2 hands, the 37 case, but black, steel, and titanium. And like, so to me, sort of like the reason to get this one is because you want a titanium version of this watch. And, as such, it's very light. I don't know the exact weight, but it is like noticeably lighter than the others. Their titanium's 33% lighter than steel, but you also don't have like the layers of sapphire on the dial. It's like this hollow dial with just titanium surfaces on there. So it feels like, it's funny, like this is the Minimalist watch, but this feels
even more minimalist.
It feels like they really took away even a lot of the essence of what makes it a Ming, but then they use the crystal to do the floating, ring there. So that kind of brings it back. So, I mean, my initial sort of reaction to it, especially I have to compare it to this one because the one I wear, like, is that it kind of loses some of what I really liked about this watch in terms of like the essence of the brand.
Yeah.
But then in terms of just being titanium, and I like titanium, I mean, this thing is like unnoticeable on the wrist. I almost feel like the strap needs to be lighter for it or something, like it needs a pearl on or something very dainty.
Yeah.
Because it's like disproportionately sort of weighted.
It's on kind of like an almost like sort of like chunky leather
Yeah.
strap. I wonder if it would like, if you put this rubber strap on it, if it would kind of like change the character.
Yeah, I mean, I should definitely try it while I have it. I mean, and their straps are something we should talk about maybe, at the end, but like they have a very specific strap style.
Yep.
Using this cool buckle, which is really neat. And their straps, the leather ones, are made by Jean Rousseau. So they're actually very high-end straps, and they're expensive. They're like $250 or so aftermarket. Yeah.
So I think there's something worth talking about with the Minimalist specifically, which is the first kind of like permanent collection Ming after all these years. This is the first watch that's kind of it's made to exist in the collection always and to always be available. You mentioned the word drop, which is kind of a dirty word sometimes in the watch community. But that's sort of like the way that they operated for the brand's entire history. Is they would have a watch, they would release it, all the allocations would be gone, and then that would be it. It'd be move on to the next one. The Minimalist is meant to always be available, and I think that it's kind of like interesting to consider. Like why this watch is the watch that's the one that's going to be the mainstay in their catalog. It seems to be them saying like this is like the expression of Ming that we want people to be able to access at all times. So I think it's just kind of interesting to consider on that level. Also, this is the first watch that they made primarily using their Swiss. They're Switzerland-based company. It does not say Swiss-made on the dial because it doesn't meet the strict qualifications for being Swiss-made, which I think is kind of an interesting story in and of itself. And I'm really happy to own the Uni, the diver, but I would honestly consider buying the Minimalist as like a compliment to it. It's just a really cool, easy to wear watch. It's very thin, very comfortable. I love the finishing on the case too. Their steel cases, have this beautiful kind of like, the way that they mix the polished and brushed, finishes is just very precise and very well done, and it's just very appealing. So I think the Minimalist might be a watch in my future. I really like that watch a lot.
Yeah, no, and like I could see owning if they came out with another watch with a complication that appealed to me, or a tougher build, or a slightly different style case, like going for that, because I'm enjoying wearing this one so much that I would like to have the Uni as well, but see what they come out with in the future. And I think this watch actually, it makes sense as, like you're saying, as that sort of open series watch, or their first open series watch, because it is sort of a distillation of where they are right now.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as kind of like if you're introducing someone to the brand, like this kind of has like all of the hallmarks. It's got the a really interesting lume application. It's got a case that's been 37 series case has been refined over years. Like it's just kind of the case they've been building towards. It's very it's very deliberate and comfortable and just wears incredibly well. It's got the strap. These straps are incredibly comfortable, and they contribute a lot to the overall wearing experience of the watch. Just really supple rubber. I know you're not a fan, generally speaking, of rubber straps, but I've heard you say positive things about these. So they have this like curve that's built in to the strap that like kind of molds to your wrist, and I think that's sort of the secret ingredient. It just some rubber straps have a tendency to just like not like ride really well on the wrist, and this avoids that by adding this like curvature to the ends of the strap that are kind of closest to the case.
Yeah, I'd love to actually know a little bit more about like the process in developing this, because it's not just the curvature. It's like they're not symmetrical like straps. So like the bottom side is actually quite a bit thicker than the top side and reduces at a different rate. So like how they figured that out so it sits so well.
Well, the reason they do that is because of the buckle and the mechanism by which the strap kind of like you insert it and loop it underneath.
Yeah, and then you have, so that's the other thing. You have this proprietary buckle design that allows you to pass through, which it's funny. Like I kind of have a mixed feeling about this. When it's on your wrist, it's very clean looking. You have no tail, and I think that's the idea. Obviously, a tail can be annoying to some. I don't really think it's like something I typically think about unless it's too long or too short.
Yeah.
But what it also does is kind of like sandwiches extra material in there. So you have to kind of plan for that, I found. So you have to like not wear it on the whole you think you're going to wear it on, but usually like one looser.
Yeah.
I find, and then it makes it very comfortable when you're wearing it, but then very hard to get off after.
It is a little tricky. You kind of have to like dig your fingernail in under it to kind of like yank it out.
Yeah, and I'm generally also like, I immediately take off the strap and put on an aftermarket strap, but this doesn't feel like a strap you want to take off because it's like a bracelet or something. It feels integral to the design of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like, I mean, I would never pick a leather strap with like a perforated texture like this. It's bizarre looking. I don't know. But once again, I really like it. I have actually been wearing it more on the rubber though since I got it. I just put it on so you'd see the original. And it's got this like Louboutin red kind of thing going on, which is kind of fun. Which, I don't know, it's just, kind of a fun thing. But actually, while we have it upside down, it's worth also talking about the movements because these use Sellita movements. I think most of these are SW probably 300 series, except for this one, which is the manual wound like SW210. But they have heavily redesigned them, and I really appreciate that, especially at the price point, because obviously Sellita SW 200s and 300s like between $1,000 and $2,000. They're not uncommon. The 300's a little bit more higher end than the 200 series generally, but like this level of recreation, especially like milling out bridges and like that's a lot of very expensive development work. So they've really invested in this, and then that, to me, at the $3,000 plus price point, you really feel like, oh, like that makes total sense again. You know?
It would be very easy for them or for any brand to just like take the stock movement and live with that, but they've really made a choice to invest in the aesthetics, of the movement in a way that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is sort of, it's typical of the brand. Something that I've talked about it on the podcast and I've written about it a little bit. This watch, the Uni diver, is a 600-meter water-resistant diver in a very compact package, and it really makes you wonder if Ming, a small brand, that's kind of like doing things on their own, to a large extent, can make a watch that's this size, these proportions, that's 600 meters water-resistant. Why are watches from like brand X that's conglomerate owned or whatever so big and bulky? In comparison, and they don't have 600 meters of water resistance. So, like, they're doing like real engineering and real watchmaking, with every facet of these watches, from the cases to the straps to the movement. Yeah,
it's passion. I mean, it's like, which is, I think, once again, not just Ming, but it's why we're so drawn to like this style of brand now. And I think we've really hit such a great point of, watch collecting because, these watches are here. They're $3,000 to $5,000. They have all these features, and and they're from an independent, which is just super cool.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Zach, for joining me to talk about Ming, and thank you for watching. As always, we really appreciate it. If you liked what you saw here, be sure to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what your favorite Ming is. We would love to hear about that. Thank you.